Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne. And one of the most common questions I get asked on YouTube, other than what program or brushes I'm using, is what do you do when you don't have motivation or inspiration but you want to draw? And at first I wasn't going to make a video about this because I thought, well, I've already made a video a long time ago on art block, but then I realized this kind of isn't about art block. Not having motivation or inspiration and not knowing how to deal with it when you're lacking them is a completely separate issue, a longer term problem than art block is. So I wanted to make this video compiling my advice, and hopefully this will help. So the first thing I would identify if you're having trouble with this is what specifically is the problem, because not having motivation and not having inspiration are actually two completely different things. In fact, I think when it comes to drawing, you actually need to have three things, kind of a trifecta, all working together for you to actually get your drawings and projects done to your satisfaction. And those 3 points essentially are motivation, inspiration, and execution. So motivation obviously is your actual will to do the thing, to sit down in front of your sketchbook or wherever you need to do your drawing and actually do that each and every day. Inspiration, on the other hand, can be missing while you still have motivation. So maybe you're sitting down in front of your sketchbook, but everything you're drawing kind of looks the same. You feel like you're drawing the same stuff over and over again. That might mean that you have a lack of inspiration. You don't feel particularly inspired in any direction, or you can't think of story ideas, but you want to make a comic. That's showing that there's more of a problem with inspiration. And lastly, execution. That's if you have those other two things, if you have motivation and inspiration, you're sitting down, you're excited about something, you have something you really want to draw and you have the will to do it, but then it's just not coming out at all right, or it just doesn't match up with what you have in your head, then you have an execution problem. If you have motivation and you have the execution, what you're probably feeling is that you're stuck in a rut. If you have inspiration and execution but no motivation, you probably have a bunch of half-finished sketches and ideas and concepts or stories, but they never actually get finished. And if you have the motivation and the inspiration, then you have a great idea, you're sitting down ready to do it, but then it just doesn't turn out the way you want, to the point where it's discouraging. These are all the different ways that these things can interact. My first suggestion is what I always do when I feel like I'm not inspired. The first thing you gotta do is take a break, because making art, and making really anything, is all about outputting. It's taking something within yourself and putting it out into the world so others can experience it. What you really need to do sometimes is just refill that creative tank, so you need to input something. That means like consuming media typically. You can listen to music that gets you all excited and hyped up to make stuff. You can watch movies or read books, or read manga or comics that originally inspired you to get into your art or drawing or whatever it is. Going back to those things that initially made that spark in you can be really, really helpful and just fun and nostalgic as well. I also recommend making sure you're making time to experience new media, especially within the medium that you're trying to do. So if you're trying to make an animation, definitely take the time during your week or whatever to at least check out what kind of animated movies and series and stuff are coming out, what sort of shorts and everything like that. And same thing with comics or music or anything like that. Just keeping your eye on what's coming out, what's going on, and you might find something that's really inspiring to you there. Another thing that I think is so important when you don't have any ideas and you just feel like there's absolutely nothing in your head right now, is to let yourself be bored. This is kind of the opposite advice. So obviously when you're watching movies, reading books and stuff, you're very entertained. This is sort of the opposite. So when I'm desperate to come up with an idea and I just have nothing, the trick I always do is to try to make myself bored, because truthfully I think most artists get all their best ideas when they're on public transit, or waiting for school to end or whatever. They're super bored out of their mind. That's when I find, at least for me, all my ideas come to me. Almost all of the big ideas that I've ended up making into series and stuff have happened when I'm sort of forced to just sit on my own and not do anything exciting or fun. And I think that can be a real issue, especially now, because it's so easy to be entertained every single second. There's some days where I just really don't want to be bored and I literally am scrolling TikTok or on social media or whatever, or playing a game, any moment of free time that I have. But on those days I never come up with anything really. I can't really make any complex ideas myself because my brain is always occupied, so there's never any time. If you do you to force yourself into this boredom scenario, a great thing you can do is just like take a bath. If you have a bathtub, just like take a bath and don't take your phone in or anything like that, and just like sit there in the warm water and just like stare into space. You might be surprised with what you come up with. I thought I might share what I tend to go back to when I really need inspiration as far as things to reread or look at again. So my examples are basically Naruto Volume 1, because this was like the manga that made me want to be a comic artist. It was like the first manga I ever got super into. I started collecting it and like saving up all my allowance money to buy volumes, so that always kind of brings me back. Fooly Cooly, which is a older series that I did read like quite a while ago, but it always stuck with me, and this one stuck with me more than Naruto, which is more of a nostalgic pick. Fooly Cooly really showed me how like loose and expressive a comic could be, and I was really excited by that. And then this is Girl from the Other Side, which is a comic I just recently started reading that I find really inspiring as well. So that's sort of like the 3 different categories within your own medium you should be checking out. The stuff that got you into it, the stuff that stuck with you, and something new that's exciting you that you picked up recently. If you look at all of those, I would be surprised if you don't feel a little bit inspired after that. I mean, look at how amazing this black and white art is. It's actually incredible. Another thing that can really help is checking out art books. I absolutely adore art books. I love this Undertale art book because it's so truthful and just like messy, and there's like developer art in there that looks like actually nothing, and then there's really beautiful illustrations and everything in between, and getting to see how messy the creative process can be on something that's considered so like polished and great now is really inspiring to me, at least. It makes it seem less daunting of a task when you see how much work goes into each step of actually making something. It doesn't just come out perfect. I also have this art book of Princess Mononoke, which is my favorite film of all time, and this one's kind of on the other spectrum, where it's like amazing how beautiful every step of the process can be, and I like looking at this when I really just feel like I need like the kick to push myself and try to make something really special. This always makes me feel like I really got to hold myself to a high standard. So yeah, just finding these little touchstones that'll help you stay inspired and pick you up when you're feeling like really unmotivated and stuff. This kind of stuff can really help you. So I think it's a worthwhile investment, even though art books are kind of pricey. Honestly, looking up concept art for the stuff that you love is so good for the motivation element. Another thing that can help seriously with motivation is making sure you have a decent space to work. Now, this is my space currently, and I'm going to clean it up for you guys to show how you should try to keep your workspace, because otherwise it is going to hurt your motivation levels. If you have a messy area to work in, it just makes everything worse. Like, you might think that you like the clutter, but trust me, if you try working in an area that's not cluttered for a while, you will never go back. My main killer of motivation and focus is when I have too much stuff on my desk, seriously, especially if I have multiple like projects open at the same time. Like sometimes I have my comic open on my drawing tablet, and then I have a video I'm editing on my main monitor, and I'll have like my sketchbook open, and then I'll have like another thing on the desk. This is not good. You want to try to make your like eye line show only the thing that you're working on. I recommend also throwing up a few little decorations. Just keep them like small and not too overwhelming, because again, I feel like anything that's really going to distract your eyeballs and make your brain overstimulated when you're looking at your workspace is going to make things harder. And before anyone accuses me of being a minimalist, if that would even happen, trust me, my aesthetic is not this at all. This is only for my workspace. Anywhere else you look in my apartment, you'll see how I kind of wish I could decorate my work desk. But yeah, I found that keeping the area where I play video games, as well as where I keep most of my decorations separate from it, has helped a lot. And not everyone's going to have this much control over their workspace, but if you do, I thought I might as well mention it. And one of the last things I just want to suggest in regards to this is to really evaluate what it is that you want. Like, what are your goals? What is it that you're trying to do here? Because if you're talking about just general motivation, and I don't get this one honestly as much, because I feel like when people are just sitting down to draw for fun, they don't feel this pressure to be super productive all the time. I mean, sometimes I definitely see people like that, but most of the time I'm hearing this from people who want to make a comic or something like that. and that is a tricky one. Even professionals don't always want to work on their projects, and the bitter truth of the matter is that sometimes you do just have to work on something when you don't feel inspired or motivated, sometimes even when your execution's not that great. And this is probably the number one thing that I learned at art school more than anything else. Was not like any particular skill or anything like that, but was just the bitter determination to work through almost anything, because honestly there were days where I was sleep deprived, where I knew I was going to have to turn in to a teacher who I knew was going to give me a negative critique no matter what, because he was the worst. And there were like a million factors that made it just a miserable experience to do that work, and I had to find ways to incentivize myself to turn that thing in anyway and do my absolute best no matter what was going to happen. So I think the ultimate secret to dealing with lack of inspiration or motivation, other than trying out a few tricks and things to try to make it easier on yourself, is just to remember that when you really have to turn something in, or you really have to draw something, your update is due, whatever it is, that you don't have to be motivated. You don't have to be inspired. Your execution doesn't even have to be that great. Sometimes you just have to sit down and do it. And in a way that takes some of the pressure off, because you know that regardless of how you're feeling, you have to have something actually done. And obviously it depends on what kind of person you are, if that sort of mindset helps or harms you. But if you are the type of person who can sort of like do things out of pure grit and spite, that is sometimes what you have to do. And it can be really helpful in a way, because you know, when you're not inspired and everything you're trying is not working to make you inspired, sometimes it's nice in a way to just be like, well, I'm just not going to be inspired today, and what I'm going to make is probably not going to be as good as if it, you know, was made when I was inspired, but I'm making it regardless. This is the scenario that I'm in, and you know, I'll just make the best of it. I'll do the best I can today. And in a way, I do think that helps. Like, at least that helped me when I was in many scenarios where I had to turn something in no matter what. It takes some of the pressure off to be like constantly like in this like creative dynamo mood. Sometimes you just have to do it, and sometimes that's enough. I really hope this was helpful to you guys. This is kind of a complicated issue that can have many different causes, so I hope I covered at least something that's going to help. Speaking of covers, this is the new cover for my webcomic Unfamiliar, which I frequently talk about, but then I always forget to say like where you can read it. Every time I mention it, someone asks, so I'm just gonna say right here, if you want to read my webcomic, it's on Tapas, where it's fully up to date. It's also on Webtoon, where it's slightly behind, but will be caught up soon. And there will be a link in the description if you would like to just click a link, because that's way easier. Thank you so much for watching till the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much to my patrons, including Sean Davidson, Gracie Rose, I Am Gender Fluid Salt, Deadly Nightshade, Maria Vasquez, Astral Fox Art, Munch Munch McGee, Dref Shranick, Middle Z, Alcapa, Lily Allure, The Expressive Poker Face, Morrissey Axolotl, Big McLarch Huge, Chris Draws, Subaki, Snow White, The Becky, Liliana Hammond, Mia Lavalley, Angelphile, Q Musgrove, Nicole Ledwak, Nicolette Queen, Rainwater Pearls, Ice Cream Pal, Best Kaiju, Lion, Nato Kamagire, Ilaria Louie, Nora Cornelison, Cola, Your Boy ST, JJ Jade, and of course, Libble.